there guys, my name is Sarah and today we're going to be reading a very interesting article that I actually wrote, just bragging a little bit, called How Language Shapes the Brain. So I'm sure as students who are learning English from Korean, you would probably find this very interesting, and I certainly do, because I'm a native speaker of English, but I do study other languages like Korean and Mandarin. I also took Spanish in high school, but I kind of forgot everything. But it turns out that learning a new language can actually literally change the structure of your brain, which is really, really cool and super interesting. So we're going to learn all about that in this article from this week. So get ready. We're going to just go through the article one sentence at a time. The text here is a little bit small, so we're just gonna go straight to the sentence by sentence descriptions. Okay. So first, we're just gonna read all the way through the entire thing, and then we're gonna go back and review, try to explain in a little bit more simple terms what everything means. Most people know that if one wants to change your body, they can do so through diet or exercise. However, many people assume that cognitive ability or neurological structure within the brain is more static and simply comes down to genetics. So here's some photos that can give you some hints as to what is going on here. New evidence suggests that it is also possible to change the neurological structure of your brain well into adolescence or even adulthood. If you're reading this, chances are high that you already possess the panacea to cure dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and learning disabilities. So, what is this cure-all miracle drug? The answer is simple: bilingualism. Research shows that learning more than one language boosts the size and activity of certain brain areas, and that the more languages we learn, the easier it is for our brain to process and retain information. Because each new language, word, and grammatical structure creates new connections between the neurons in our brains, speakers of multiple languages often are able to process new information faster than those who speak just one language. Multilinguals also experience a slower decline in cognitive function in old age than monolinguals. The results of an experiment conducted at the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom indicated that patients who speak 2 or more languages, the onset of dementia can be delayed by up to 4.5 years. Crazy. The implications of this are huge. If the results of the study are applicable to the general population, that means that learning a second language is more effective at preventing cognitive decline than any modern medicine currently available. So, pretty crazy stuff, right? And very good news for people like me and you who speak more than one language. But we're gonna go back and review each sentence one by one. Okay, so most people know that if you want to change your body, you can do so through diet or exercise. So this is pretty simple, right? If you want to be skinnier or if you want to have more muscle, you can eat certain foods and do certain exercises, and you can change the way that you look, the way that you feel, your strength, lots of things. But a lot of people think that what goes on in your mind, you can't really change after a certain age. But it turns out that that might not actually be true. In the second sentence it says, however, many people assume that cognitive ability or neurological structure within the brain is more static and simply comes down to genetics. So this sentence has a lot of crazy vocabulary in it, so we're gonna just quickly review. So assume is to, like in Korean you would say 가정하다. So you think that something is true before you actually do any research into it. So the second word is cognitive ability. Cognitive ability. It's a little bit tricky even for me to pronounce, sorry. So basically cognitive ability it's basically kind of like the hardware strength of your brain. So kind of like on a computer, you have RAM, or in a car you have horsepower. It's stuff that's kind of like built into the machine. And unless you take the whole thing out and replace it with a stronger component, you can't really change it, right? So that's how a lot of people understand cognitive function. So that's how a lot of people understand cognitive ability. But it might not necessarily be the case, as we will see in the following sentences. And that neurological structure means something very similar. So just the connections between neurons, the little nerves inside of our brains. So a lot of people think that these things can't change, that they're static. So static means something that does not change, something that is not in motion. So people think that cognitive function and neurological structure are static, they don't change, and it just comes down to genetics. So it's kind of like a lottery system. You're born with it, you can't really change it, there's nothing that you can do about it. But it turns out that is actually not the case for bilingual people. So you can see in this picture that it's like the development of a brain from infancy to adulthood. So a lot of people think that basically like the brain that you get when you're a baby, it turns into the brain that you get as an adult, and there's not a whole lot that you can do in between. However, new evidence suggests that it's also possible to change the neurological structure of your brain well into adolescence or even adulthood. So some people think that you can't change the hardware, your neurological structure, or your cognitive function, especially once you're past childhood. They think, oh, well, if I'm 15 years old, or if I'm 25 years old, there's really not a whole lot that I can do to make my brain work differently. But that's actually not the case. You can change the neurological structure of your brain well into adolescence, so your teen years, or even adulthood. If you're reading this, chances are high that you already possess the panacea to cure dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and learning disabilities. So it's a little bit of a tricky word. It doesn't really sound like it looks. I know, I'm so sorry. English does not have a system like Hangul that it is very easy to see how to pronounce a word just by looking at it. So I'm sorry, but you just gotta memorize it, unfortunately. But don't be too hard on yourself, because even Americans like me sometimes make mistakes. So yeah, you say this like panacea, panacea. So if you break this word up into two parts, there's pan and sia. So pan in English means all, everything. And then sia, it means like a medicine or a cure. So if you put those two things together, you can see that a panacea is a medicine that cures everything. Okay, makes sense? So with this panacea of bilingualism, speaking two or more languages, you can cure dementia, you can cure Alzheimer's disease, and even learning disabilities. So that's pretty impressive, right? You might even call bilingualism a miracle drug. Yeah, so this is a set phrase that we use quite often in English. So a miracle drug, it's like it cures everything and there's no side effects, and usually they're actually really, really hard to find. And a lot of times they say it's a miracle drug, but actually it has some bad side effects or some stuff that we don't know about. But as far as I know, there are no bad points to speaking more than one language. And it turns out if you speak more than one language, you can prevent all of these cognitive diseases, which is, really amazing. So basically, if you are bilingual, if you speak perhaps English and German, or English and Korean, or any other pair of languages, your brain is going to change its structure based on how and when you use those languages. So why is this the case? Why does learning another language help your cognitive function or your neurological structure change even when you're a grown-up? Let's see. Research shows that learning more than one language boosts the size and activity of certain brain areas, and that the more languages we learn, the easier it is for our brain to process and retain information. So learning more than one language, it boosts the size of certain parts of your brain. It makes them bigger, it makes them stronger. And it makes it easier for your brain to process information, to kind of like understand new information that's coming in, and also retain it. So it helps you remember better the things that you learn. And this is because each new language, word, and grammatical structure creates new connections between the neurons in our brains. So speakers of multiple languages are often able to process new information faster than those who speak just one language. For instance, if a monolingual English speaker were to see this thing right here, they would think, book, and that's it. But if you speak more than one language, you see this and you think, book. You could also think, 책, or if you speak Chinese, 书, or Spanish, libro. So instead of just one connection, you can have 2, 3, 4, or even more different connections to the concept of book. So when you learn something new, if you see something that's unfamiliar, or if you're processing some new information, you have 2 or more times the different ways to process that new information that's coming into your brain. And because it's stored in 2 different parts of your brain, it's easier to access that information later on. So you're twice as likely to remember it. It's pretty cool, right? So I'm gonna go put this back. So here we can see a picture of a monolingual brain, a brain of a person that speaks only one language, because in Latin, mono means one. So we can see that the frontal parietal, so just a disclaimer, I am not a psychologist, so I'm not 100% sure about the pronunciations of the different parts of the brain, but I will try my best. So this is the frontal lobe. It's located at the front of your head. This is the parietal lobe, and then the temporal lobe. So you can see that in the monolingual brain, it's kind of like, it's not very dense, and the connections between the frontal, parietal, and temporal lobe, it's kind of weak, right? But when you speak more than one language, you can see that the connections become much richer, and also the lobes themselves get bigger and also more dense. So there's more nerves inside. So that's pretty cool. Multilinguals also experience a slower decline in cognitive function in old age than monolinguals. So when we get older, we all know that it's harder to remember things. Sometimes you forget things very easily, and it's hard to process new information as it's presented to you. But if you speak more than one language, then you will experience a slower decline in cognitive function than you would if you spoke only one language. And that's because your brain is like stronger on the inside, and also because you have more neurons connected to each other. Even if some of those break down, even if those connections become weakened, because you have so many other connections in your brain, it's easier to continue processing and retaining new information even as you get older. So how do we know this? The results of an experiment conducted at the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom indicated that patients who speak 2 or more languages, the onset of dementia, so the start of symptoms displaying themselves for dementia, or 치매 in Korean, can be delayed by up to 4.5 years. So I don't know if any of you know anyone who has dementia. It's a very sad disease, and it's very difficult to see a person that maybe you've known your entire life, and they just can't remember things as well as they used to anymore. They might even forget people, even their family members, even their own children. And it's a very sad situation for everyone involved, and it can be quite scary for the patient as well. So I think anyone who knows someone who suffers from dementia or Alzheimer's, they would give anything to get 4.5 more years with that person when they're still in optimal cognitive condition. So this is really, really amazing news, because if you speak more than one language, you can push back, you can delay the onset of dementia by up to 4.5 years. And yeah, this is a super significant discovery. I was pretty amazed when I saw it. So this is very good news for us. The implications of this are huge. If the results of the study are applicable to the general population, that means that learning a second language is more effective at preventing cognitive decline than any modern medicine currently available. So scientists have been trying to find a cure for dementia and Alzheimer's disease and lots of other cognitive diseases for a really, really long time. And like I said, it's a very sad but also very common, unfortunately, disease instead of symptoms. So there's been tons of money and resources and time and entire scientific careers dedicated just to finding a cure or a medication that will work to treat these symptoms. But the thing is, like, learning a new language, it can be potentially totally free, especially if you grow up in a bilingual environment or if you learn a second or third language as a child. Certainly, I think studying a second language it's much less expensive than these experimental treatments, which can cost a lot of money, even if you have insurance. So if it's true that this experiment is applicable to the general population, so if the results of the experiment can be used or extrapolated or extended to the entire population of the world, then that means that learning a second language is more effective than any modern medicine. And I mean, that's pretty impressive, because modern medicine has only existed for a relatively short period of time if you think about it. Like, medicine as we know, it's constantly changing and constantly updating. And when we think of medical science, we think, oh, it's the most modern, it's the most up-to-date, it's the most scientific. And we think, well, if it's all these things, it also must be the most effective. But we find that bilingualism, which A, is free in a lot of cases, and B, bilingualism has existed since pretty much the beginning of language in humans. This ancient panacea, this ancient cure-all drug, it can actually be more effective than all the science and the hard work and the money that's been poured into modern medicine. So, pretty crazy stuff. So, today we learned about how language shapes the brain. I really hope that this article was helpful for you and perhaps even interesting. I don't know. I definitely found this article very interesting, and it definitely renewed my passion for learning foreign languages, and I hope that it did the same for you as well. So I think it's really awesome that you're studying English as a second language, not just for your career or your personal development or for school, whatever reason it is that you're learning English. You can also know that on top of that, you also have these great cognitive benefits to learning a second language. So that is all we're going to do for today. If you like this video, make sure to let us know in the comments section below and to subscribe to this channel. All right, I hope that all of you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week. Bye!